Welcome to Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers. Tonight we're going to take time out for a special tribute to the profound loss of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsberg, as well as a little bit of the implications and the gross hypocrisy on display in this rush to fill her seat.
As you said, a profound loss. It truly was. I really felt it. I felt like I got punched in the stomach when I got the news that she had passed. We did truly lose one of the great ones. She was such a voice of reason. You know, I know she's kind of pegged as a liberal and a liberal voice, but she was really a voice for reason. She was the voice for women. She was the voice for LGBT. Q individuals. She was the voice of workers. I mean, on every level, she truly was a treasure that everybody across the political spectrum really does need to have some appreciation for. Now, again, this is a major loss. We are going to feel this, and there are, as you mentioned at the top of this piece, some pretty serious implications.
Oh, serious indeed.
Especially for women's health and women's rights. But it even transcends all of that as well when we look at the future.
We're talking about if the Republicans get their way, which there seems to be very little stopping them, we're talking about a Supreme Court that will not only turn back the generation before us, their efforts towards achieving civil rights, racial, sexual equality, but will hold that standard, which the majority of Americans do not align with, for the next 40 years.
Right.
We want all of our Gen Zers to pay close attention. We're looking at the potential for the Supreme Court to be hugely stacked to the far-right conservative end on all kinds of issues for your entire adult life.
That's right. And we've had the last couple of Republican presidents have made a point of appointing younger judges to the bench.
Yeah, because
look at the last ones that came around.
That's right. Sam Alito and Justice Roberts were the youngest justices ever appointed to the bench, and Kavanaugh
until Brett Kavanaugh.
Right, Kavanaugh is the youngest.
Right, exactly.
So what's he like? He's close to our age, right? Like
he's younger.
56, 57, something like that. He may be sitting on the bench for 40 years himself.
Right. That's right. So, you know, and again, especially for progressives and people who were cheering and applauding, rightly so. A couple of months ago, the Supreme Court, when it pretty much struck down the Louisiana abortion restriction bills, but Kavanaugh and Gorsuch were very much in support of it. They voted for it.
Again, Roberts, a Republican, appointed by a Republican president, and pulled a surprise, which he's done a couple of times, and voted with the liberals on that bill.
Right. However,
if they bring another one on, then the balance is 6-3.
Right.
And Roberts can disagree all he wants and just, show, oh, look.
Exactly.
So
it's a meaningless an empty gesture.
Right. Because
But keep in mind also that in Roberts siding with the more liberals on part of the majority on that decision, he also qualified his opinion by saying the door should stay open for future challenges.
Right.
And especially now that Ruth Bader Ginsberg is no longer here, there are people champing at the bit to get their cases before the Supreme Court.
Sure.
And there are going to be dozens of challenges that are going to continue to chip away and wear down at Roe versus Wade. Right. So right now, and people need to also understand that there are already a number of state legislation that are basically referred to as trigger bills. that they've actually been waiting, and I know this sounds conspiratorial, but a lot of these conservatives have been waiting for Ruth Bader Ginsburg to die so that they can have their day in the sun. And these trigger bills that many of these states, these red states, have passed, basically, if you're not familiar with that, say we're passing a bill that will go into effect when Roe versus Wade is overturned. And there are, I think, 12 states right now, maybe even a little bit more, who are poised and ready to absolutely ban abortion in those states.
Right.
Once Roe versus Wade is overturned, there will be no state protections.
Right.
People,
I don't know if a lot of people understand. People think that Roe v. Wade is the Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion. It's really much more about states' rights.
Right.
So if it is overturned, which is a very real possibility, then it goes back to the way it was pre-1973, when it was legal in some states and illegal in most, and that women in those states had to go through great trials and tribulations to travel, sometimes 3-4 days, to go to a state where it was legal.
Right.
Or, more likely, resort to back alley illegal abortions, which there's no reason to believe, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, that we won't see a return of.
Which we already kind of see some of it when it's still legal and it's still in place. So, and again, this is, I think, first and foremost, one of the most significant things that we have to look out for. But I think it's also important to point out that it's not just about abortion.
Yes, I'm glad you said that.
When we
this
look,
is really, again, what I said about the general values of this country in 2020 compared to this desire to bring us back to 1950.
Right.
It's not. This is not about abortion. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was not a poster girl. In fact, when she was having her own confirmation, a lot of the feminist groups were worried that she wasn't liberal enough.
Right.
But it's about civil rights, marriage equality, voter rights.
That's right.
I think things are crazy now with all of these out in the open efforts. I mean, closing down post offices, ripping up mailboxes, dismantling sorting machines. Oh, no, that has nothing to do with trying to screw up the election.
Right.
Because more Democrats vote by mail-in ballots. Right.
We've got health care, which is at risk.
Again, just because Trump is running commercials saying that he's going to protect pre-existing conditions and he's got a great plan. He has no plan, and he is right now before the Supreme Court an effort to try and gut the Affordable Care Act.
Exactly, including the stipulation for pre-existing conditions. Right. So we've got to really be worried about health care. We've got to be worried about affirmative action.
We've got to be more worried now than we were 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely. About protections for LGBT people. We've got to worry about sexual discrimination. We've got to worry about anti-discrimination, workers' rights, economic regulations, environment. You think the environmental laws have been decimated now? Wait till they own the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
We're going to see these things like we never have before. So, this really is one of the most important times I've ever seen us living through.
I mean, that's the lunacy of this presidency, that for the last 3.5 years we kept saying, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. How much crazier can it get? And now, people have been saying it every 4 years, but now this is literally the most important election of our lifetime.
It really is, and I hope you all see that, feel that, and get out there and vote. And as we like to sort of end this piece with, we want to have our poetic justice, we like to call it. And this time we're going to do it a little bit differently, given the spirit of what we're talking about. And I would like to put out my nominee for Hypocrite of the Month. Right? We look at poetic justice filled with irony. And this shout goes out to all of you conservatives, your far-right, politically bent individuals, your declarations of being the guardians of morality, being the keepers of the moral code. Well, let's be really frank about the reality here. You are the people who act the most immorally. You are the people that do things that are downright despicable when it comes to human dignity for everybody else.
With the cameras rolling. What did Lindsey Graham say? Hold the tape. Use my words against me. I would say the same thing even if it was a Republican president. And he goes, yep, I don't care.
So what?
I'm doing it anyway.
So what? So a shout out to you, conservatives, for beautiful hypocrisy. Thank you. And thank you for joining us on another edition of Sex and the News with the Siegel Brothers.